So first thing you have to do is turn this thing on, and you have to have it turned on like 20 or 30 minutes before you want to use it. It's got to warm up or else everything's going to change with your measurements when you're trying to make them. This tube, we always unplug it. It goes back here. And all you have to do, see how this chamber has like some condensation in it? That's one reason we unplug this. If this tube stays wet all the time with condensation, it ruins it and stuff. So you just have to put it on there and do like a quarter turn, half turns. Anyway, so there's that. And then the other thing we do to keep that chamber from getting too wet, which both those things were done and it's still wet, but there's a filter and stuff that goes on here, and we always take that off, and it is off, so kind of surprising it's still that wet. But anyway, the computer you'll have to still turn on. Come over here and let's, so anyway, you'll do that 20 or 30 minutes early. Here are all the pieces that you'll use, and you want to pay attention to these arrows, and you're probably going to have people running on the treadmill to the left of the cart, but you could do it on the treadmill to the right of the cart too. So you just want to make sure that this is pointing the right way, so the air is going to leave this piece going that direction, right? If you're on the other side, then you'd have to switch it around. And it can go either way. You just have to put it together in the right order. So if we're using the treadmill on the left, we'd have the air coming out toward the machine on the right. So just put your cap here and put your spit collector there. So again, if you were going to do it the other direction, you just have to basically just flip these, and then the arrow would be pointing toward the machine on the other way. Anyway, so get those on. And then this valve, notice these are the one direction thing, so it won't pull any air in that way, but it will push it out that way. So put it in there. And you know, you can have your subject test the valve out. If they blow, like if you turn the valves the wrong way, they'd blow, and either they wouldn't be able to blow out or they wouldn't be able to breathe in. So I don't know, unless you want to do an anaerobic test, and you could just of course you guys are doing anaerobic stuff, so
practically
your training mass people will do way better if you turn the valves the wrong way and they can't breathe. Oh, but the threads here, well, you guys know how to thread stuff. Just be careful, because you want to make sure you're really on with the threads before you crank them down.
Do you want us to go too tight or tight or just snug?
Snug. Yeah, if we crank them too much, well, one thing is if you turn this, if you keep turning that, it'll just pop out of the threads.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want to go too much. Anyway, so you've got this, and then you have to put this mouthpiece on, and it works best if you probably put a glove on, and then just kind of rock it like that. And as long as it's on there like halfway at least, then you're good. And don't let it be, you want it to be flat, but if it is tilted just a bit, like you wouldn't want it tilted that way, because that would tend to loosen this joint right here, and then you might get room air in instead of expired air. Anyway, so if it was turned slightly that way, that would just reinforce the connection. Anyway, there's all that. So you'll put that on before they test. You have to make sure that your subjects are wearing nose plugs, or else you'll lose expired air. You want to make sure they wear their chest strap, and you want to make sure they get them wet too. So they need to be wet under these parts here. If you're using the old plastic type, you want to make sure the puller's oriented the right way. If you use the type that the puller snaps off, you have to saturate these. It's like a fabric, and you have to saturate it. Anyway, we have a ton of these. They work fine, so you might as well just use those. The headgear piece, put it together. Just put that thing on the inside so it's comfortable on their forehead. You can see there's a way that it'll work better, so just kind of pay attention when you're putting that together. So you've got all your stuff made. This is all stuff you can do while you're letting that thing warm up. And we have 2 long hoses and 2 shorter hoses. They're both fine for just doing the test. I usually always grab the long ones. Something about the hoses though. I guess we need one of these. I'll show you about the hoses. You gotta be careful with them or they can rip and they're really expensive. So this filter, it's kind of subtle, but this side tapers just a little bit, and this side's straight. The taper side, you won't really get a good connection with that if you put this tapered side into it. And so you put the tapered side in this rubber thing, then it grabs hold of that taper well. And then you shove this straight side here into this device. And then your hose, you got this few inches that is reinforced. You want to make sure you're doing all of your manipulation with that part. If you grab here and pull or anything, the plastic between these ribs is really thin, so it'll rip. So just, okay. And then, hey, you know what? We should probably get one of you guys to put on the headgear and just get here on the bike. Bring a mouthpiece and nose clip and headgear. All right, so before we get started, we got to calibrate this. And it might seem like it's calibrating. You wouldn't want to trust it because it's only been a few minutes. But basically what you do is, this thing usually stays set well. I'm not sure what's been going on, but the units keep getting off. But anyway, you just have to get your right units. So it's already on temperature. Just hit this units button and you'll get Celsius. So you type that in. Oops. Barometric pressure. You have to switch the units. 653. And humidity, 14. So it'll make the wrong corrections if you forget to change that around. So just change that each time. Usually, and it'll always remember what you put in each day. So you won't have to change it again. But I usually just kind of look and see if anything has changed. Sometimes if it's like noon, it might be heating up over here, and so if you do something half-hour apart, you might get a lot of sunlight in here warming it up. So just check it. Anyway, this thing is really nice because it reminds you what to do, so you don't leave the gas on and run all the oxygen out. So just, it'll tell you, turn this thing on, turn this thing a quarter of a turn. So just turn that, hit OK. And then it's going to sample the room air first, and then it'll sample the air from the tank. So the tank is a standard air, and it'll always compare basically the expired air to the standard to make sure that it's, and the room air to the standard air to make sure it's like how it compares. And then really what you're looking at is how much of the known amount of oxygen that's in the air, how much are you taking out of that by what's left in your expired gas, and then how much CO2 is in your expired gas too. So it'll remind you to turn off the gas. You said okay. And then it'll show you this. There are some instructions in this book to remind you about calibration. That's what we're doing right now. We're calibrating it so that it can give you an accurate measurement of the gases. And then after this, we'll calibrate it for flow so that it can recognize the right gas or the gases properly, and then a flow to make sure that it's recognizing the right volume at different speeds of inspiration. Anyway, so there's some things in here, some general instructions, so you can look at that. But anyway, you want this change to be less than 1% change. So you're 0.6 with oxygen, that's fine, but you're 2 with carbon dioxide. So what you want to do, so we're out of range, and you wouldn't want to do a test like that. And the thing is, even if we get it to tell us an acceptable amount, you still wouldn't want to do that if it's not warmed up, because you'll, you know, it might, as it warms up, it might change that, you know. So again, get it warmed up. But what you want to do is, if it's out of range, just save it and then recalibrate. So that stuff's all still good because we did that. Oh, relative humidity says it's 15 now. Let's change it. Probably just because oh, temperature too. All right. So I was looking at this the other day. You want to watch, if we start running out of gas, we still have a lot of gas in here, so you should be fine. I thought it was a little bit lower than that. You guys are doing maxes before and after one. And then how long you gonna have people working out with masks?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
So I'm hoping to hear back from the IRBs.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Okay, so now you can see less than 1% change. So we would accept that as a test. And then save that. So your gas is calibrated. Now we got to calibrate its ability to detect the right volume. So basically, to do that, we'll pump in 3 liters of gas at different speeds, and then make sure it can recognize that. So put this here. You want to build the piece you're going to use, and then remember that's attached to the mouth, so it's always going to go in here and out here. So attach this piece on here. You don't want to do it just through the hose. I mean, it should be about the same, but you just want it to be as close to the measurement as you can get it. So have it go through the mouthpiece. Okay. So that's connected. Adjust that because that thing keeps wiggling back and forth. Anyway, so this is kind of like, remember Pong? Did you ever see that? This is kind of like a dumber version of a game like that, you know? You feel kind of like it's a video game. You just have to do these flushes to flush the hose out. So you have all these little zones. You have to get or keep this yellow line within each one of those zones. So this is kind of the hardest one. So there you go. And then you move on. This used to be harder because you had to get it in there perfectly the first try and do it in order. Now if I screw up and go too hard into that one, it'll just accept it for that one, or I can cancel the last one if it sucked, whatever. So like if I hated that last one, if I didn't think it was a very good one, I'd just cancel it and I'd put it back and I'd redo it. Usually I have to go pretty hard on that one, but you'll see. So look at this. Here you want the difference to be less than 1% as well, and we have no difference. So we'd save that, and then we're ready to test. So